So there are some people outside. So I'm happy to introduce this session focused on test usage. And we begin with Kruno Matizik from Croatia. Hello. And he will talk about factor structure of the Croatian Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale, 4th edition. Yes, you can start. If you want, you can share your screen. It's okay. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Hi everyone, I'm Krunoslav Matišić, professor of psychology at the Department of Psychology at Catholic University of Croatia. And today I will be presenting a work that I did with my colleague Valentina Ružić. We did a factor analysis of the WISE-4. So let's go. The Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale 4 incorporates several significant changes compared to the WISE-3. Complete WISE-4 comprises of 15 subtests, 10 of which are core subtests required to compute the full-scale IQ, and 4 index scores that measure specific domains of cognitive functioning. The WISE-4 manual and technical manual outlines the underlying 4-factor structure of the WISE-4, where there is a strong construct validity support for the 4 indexes comprising of the verbal comprehension index, perceptual reasoning index, working memory index, and processing speed index. Each of these indexes contributes to providing a composite score that represents overall general intellectual ability, like the full-scale IQ. And the 4-factor model contributes to an overall second-order G factor known as the FSIQ, which comprises overall general intelligence. Several studies have examined the factor structure of the WISE-4 using different normative, clinical, or standardization samples. And in the technical and interpretive manual of the WISE-4, there are outlined several models of confirmatory factor analysis which were tested before publishing the WISE-4. Confirmatory factor analysis is preferred to exploratory when there is an explicit theory of the factor structure which is present. The proposed model, that is the model where the second-order full-scale IQ is measured by 4 first-order factor or cognitive domains, which we stated earlier. There was also alternative models, which included all 15 subtests and not just the core subtest, and models with the variation of the number of first-order factors. Specifically, they tested 2, 4, 5, and 6 potential factors to interpret the full-scale IQ. They used several model fit statistics like adjusted goodness of fit index, comparative fit index, etc., and concluded that the 4-factor model fits best for the total sample and for the 5 age groups that are present in the norms currently. Besides the original factor analysis, which Pearson published in the last few years, a number of studies have investigated what has been called the bifactor or direct hierarchical model of intelligence. For this model, all of the latent variables are defined by the subtests directly. This means that the general factor is a first order factor in the bifactor model and not a higher order factor defined by the first order factors. The bifactor model has been shown to be a better fit of the WISE-4 data collected from a clinical sample attending a university-based clinic specializing in learning disabilities. But recently, the bifactor approach has been criticized for an inherent statistical bias, which makes it more likely to have acceptable fit statistics than the higher order factor model. So in the present study, we try to analyze possible factor structure of the WISE-4 in the creation normative sample. Our sample comprised of 700 participants, 49% were males, 51% were females, and the average age was 39.74. The age ranged from 16 to 74 years because this is a normative sample. Well, the instrument which we used is the mentioned Wechsler in the Adult Intelligence Scale, 4th edition, which comprises of 10 core subtests: vocabulary, information, similarities, digit span, arithmetic, block design matrix, reasoning, visual puzzle, coding, and symbol search. You need those 10 to calculate the full scale IQ, and the 5 supplemental subtests: letter number sequencing, figure weights, comprehension, cancellation, and picture completion. Those 10 core subtests are put on one of the indices: verbal comprehension index for verbal subtests, perceptual reasoning index, working memory index, and processing speed. Both the Kaiser-Meyer-Olkin measure of sampling was adequate as Bartlett's test of sphericity, so we continued with our exploratory factor analysis. We used the fixed number of factors, which was 4, and that model fit very good. We tried several different factor analysis, and it explained through 4 components 75.42% of the variance. The pattern matrix after variance rotation looked just as it should. All of the subtests had good coefficients with their primary factors, and all of the subtests were put in the correct indices. Like the verbal comprehension index is comprised of similarities, vocabulary, and information, or the working memory index from digit span and arithmetic. So in general, this factor structure that we got looked good. The current study finds similar results to those reported by the technical manual and several other studies. Our variance, which we explained, is greater than in other studies like before mentioned Nelson or Collins in the introduction. And I'm keeping this very short. The most important finding from the study is that the 4-factor structure seems to adequately fit the data for our sample, for the creation sample. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? Online here. Yes, so I have one question. Did you test 5 model?
With the 5-factor structure.
Yes, 5 model with visual processing versus fluid intelligence.
We did several tests, and we used 2, 3, and 4. We stopped at 4 because if we did the 5 with none other study explained good the 5-factor model. If you are asking that question, I'm not sure. Sorry.
Yes.
Thank you for your question.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. So we can have another presentation from Mark Shitukato.
Yes,
and on digital and online testing, a good idea. Thank you.
Is it this one?
No.
This one.
It's okay. Thank you.
Can I walk, or maybe for the? It's better than I sit down. Yeah.
Is the
Better.
to stick with the
Okay.
photo.
So, good morning.
Good morning.
That was Groenland. I'm Mark Schittekate. My colleague Veerle Briers, I have to excuse her. Okay. And I will try to give an overview of a kind of meta view about things we call digital testing, testing on a screen, tele-testing. Everywhere there are scoring programs, or the way you give a test to a person. I want to try to give more than 40, 50 years of experience. Really in the 1980s, one of my first things to do was have a look at personality questionnaires that are put on a screen and look to the equivalence. And that's the central word. In fact, it's the question about, do we measure the same if we put something on a screen or you give it on paper? And my general answer will be, just take care. Take care. There's a lot happening when you put people, children, adults after a screen. I show you some scientific evidence, even from my own research. And on the other hand, I will go into general things. This is a very crowded beginning, and it's all the things I'm involved in. You don't even see ITC, even ITC is also there, but let's move into the introduction. What I'm telling today is published, but for the time being it's in Dutch. And I guess nobody here speaks Dutch, no? So, but in 1 year, I hope it will be published also in a big English paper. The starting point to give this kind of overview was, in fact, COVID. It's COVID who really made things much faster. In my own university, I worked a long time on the risk, and suddenly with the COVID, the risk was taken at a tele-assessment way. So we said, okay, it's needed, we need to test. But afterwards, we saw what was happening when you have a child 200 kilometers at home behind the screen and you're testing here. It was very amazing what everything went wrong. The scientific angle, so as told you already, do we measure the same is for me the major question. And I skip to I'll go to the end now. I just hope I give you the message, be critical, be skeptical. Digital assessment is very in many variants from different angles. I'm going to talk very briefly about advantages, but of course of limitations. Then I go into equivalence research. I can only show you a few meta-analyses. There are more than 1,000. I have more than 1,000 papers on what are we measuring when we use a screen. So it's a very big work. Maybe more pleasant is why Pearson asks me, I work a lot with Pearson, with Gograven, and they ask me many times, Flanders, why are you so difficult? It's so nice, a PC, it's easy to take tests. Why? You're the only country that's so difficult. We sell our tablets very well there's no objections. So I'm a difficult guy. That's because I think mainly about what are the consequences of testing, and a good test in a bad manner, that's terrible. Why also? Because yesterday, who heard me, I'm talking, sorry Nigel, only about clinical and educational psychology, not work. That's for me a different world. And I know in Flanders about 500 instruments are used every day. And only, that for me shocking, but with the quality scan, only 1 out of 4 should be used. That's a majority that is not used. So again, Flanders or Mark Schitterkatte, very difficult person. There's only a minority of the tests that used every day that should be tested. Of course, there's more who listened yesterday to me. You have context and why you use it and so on. But if you just look at psychometric qualities, it's a minority in Flanders everyday used test. That's why I'm so not easy, but looking very skeptical. And then I have my own research. I'll come to that, but I'll tell you in 1 minute already what is happening. Social response scale, maybe you know that, that's kind of scan for autism spectrum disturbances. Just offering the same paper questionnaire on a screen made a world of difference. That's parents who say how their children, my child is like this, my child is like that. The same thing, just putting on the screen and answering here. My statistical people said, what's happening here? It's a total different world. And I'll give you some details about what might be the case, why it's like that. But we still don't have the real cue. It's several factors together that make, when human beings watch this, they react differently, depending on you are watching me while this proctored or not is a very important one. Whether I can scroll, what kind of feeling it gives, can I change things or not? And the paper question, that must be all the factors, but okay. A little bit small, maybe, but I'm not going into detail. You have all kinds of, what is, I test digital, what does that mean? In group, before a screen, in individual, I'm there, I'm at a distance. I work also with non-digital things, so all kind of variations, but this is too detailed to tell. And test taking and also scoring and automatic reports, there's a lot of digital variations, and that's just what I wanted to say here. And very important, maybe at the top, tele-assessment is now in. Yesterday we had a symposium about tele-assessment. For me, tele-assessment is only a little part of digital testing. Digital testing is everything where a screen or something is involved. About tele-assessment, despite the symposium of yesterday, I find very, very extensive scientific research. I think it's too fresh. Remote testing is only something from the last, in my view, the last 3-4 years that has been blown. And with tele-assessment, there's a lot of psychometric problems when I see it, and it's mainly about standardization. There are a lot more other things. How do you, like Proctor again, timing, technical problems, even copyright issues. And for me, the highlight in negative perspective was when they promoted, let's take the risk at home and I'm here. That was, we even had a kind of warning to the professionals, please don't do that after we saw the data. That's a nice one, eh? No, that's not nice, but that's just to show, if you could read it at the top, that's my first things I had to do in 1985, and that was about screens already. So that's a long time. Then you go into several other, mainly meta-analysis, and the main thing was, there is always, the main finding for me, it's depending on what you measure. It's depending on how digital it is, but there is always there is difference, but in few cases, only few cases, there's not a lot of difference, but in many cases, there's a lot of difference, whether you work digital or not. So that was not good news then, already for 4 or 5 decades. Bruno again? Yes. Okay. I don't want to be too negative. Of course, I see advantages in standardization, less mistakes, you win time, you can measure abilities that are not possible with your case. But I see, and let's look at the block design, unfairness. I think there's more unfairness possible, even experience or not. And think about my children all the time on the phone, but my neighbors are from different cultures and don't have those opportunities, and that makes a difference just in experience. And the major concerns about the digital scoring, I heard it already in other sessions, is what's happening behind all those scoring programs. As a president of Belgian Test Commission, we mainly ask, show us, not show us the money, but show us how you make these norms. And we found maybe on 10, we found 2 programs that were already, oh, I'm sorry, we mixed male and female. Sorry, correct, yeah, we have to change it. So there's a lot of in the dark, let's say, when programs are scoring. And another one is like less familiar with psychometric measures. That's from the risk 5, for example, you just do like that, and you get 7 pages of statistics. 7, that's the case in our country. No, and there is 5, 7. I see some faces above it. And 7 pages of statistics, and I hear and see every day professionals using and talking about these things not in a good manner. That's just overload and too much details. That's another issue. But there's a lot to say about that. So little things are gone. But for me, the key, and I'm not talking about neuropsychological instruments like I saw yesterday that are just made at the university or in a commercial way. I'm talking about the existing 500 instruments that for me, the main problem is the norms are collected at the same way as you use your instrument. And that's not the case. I hope you understand. The risk is I did about 1,000 children with my case, and it was a face-to-face. And then you just don't go working with a tab, with the iTab, and take it digital. And that's only in one case, that's for me, that's okay. That's a cell 5. There you have digital norms, and norms, a sample where digital test taking, and also now it's digital. So for me, then mainly there's no problem. You know what you're doing, your norms and standardization is okay. But in all the other cases, it's mainly paper and pencil test taken. And after a few months, the publishers come with here, try this digital. And so that's for me still, if there's no equivalence, and very important also at an individual level. You don't want to know how much arguing I had with Pearson already. They say, we have the studies that show this is the same, but this equivalence at a group level, this group has 1.5, and this with the digital testing, and this is paper and pencil, also 1.5, so it's the same. No, that's not the proof. You have to prove that in one individual, the two ways of taking it is the same, and that's not okay for the moment. So if we don't have proof of equivalence, we advise as a Belgian Test Commission in our rankings and all kind of test advices, don't use the digital manner. And I think we are one of the countries that maybe with the test survey, we have only about 5% in the clinical sector who work with that. So I hope they listen to us. That's my own research. I said it already. I'm getting a little bit out of time, I guess. This is the social response scale. We collected data that were in many cases doing the same, one standard deviation difference on certain variables. So that was this guy here. Oh, what's happening? I said it was very important whether or not you can scroll back, whether or not all items are on one screen, very, very important, proctored or not, and even adaptive or not. I mean, if you give a too long test on a screen, people start sleeping, and getting more attention is getting away than just looking at all that interaction. And adaptive is once you only give 5 items instead of 25, and that's maybe the future. But the ICAR, if you don't know whether you know it, that's cognition, measuring cognition for researchers. It's a public domain instrument. Then in a more general way, we have a lot of guidelines, even Associazione Italiana di Psicologi, and you have, but in these things about remote testing, of course, you have the Americans who have a lot of guidelines, but I'm going to end up with I'm saying one more time, I really believe digital assessment is a lot of a potential enrichment for the future. But always there will be a difference, and it's depending on what is measured, some or a lot of bias. And just be very skeptical, critical. That's the thing I wanted to give you after reading a lot. And so I hope you just think twice before you just change the mode of how you take a test and how it was constructed. That's my message. That's it. Thank you.
That's perhaps before. Yeah.
I try to
Maybe read.
just to let you know that
Next one. This one you can.
do you believe that the problem of difference between test topics would be stress? No, it's in personality forms. It's not the worst case. If you measure it from the kind of different, if you make 5, 6 different, and personality is at the bottom, but still at the bottom. I mean, it's rather the impact is not as big as when you measure cognition or opinions about others. Very important, but also is the multi-informant difference. That's if you talk about other people on a screen, it's a very strange one. Or you talk about yourself, personality, that even makes a difference. So personality is not, in my eyes, what I've read, even in the 1985 article, you will see there's difference, but it's not a nightmare. Risk 5, tele-assessed, that's for me nightmare.
Thank you. I think there is another question. And Mathieu, hello Mathieu, has a question.
Hello, thanks for the presentation. I had a question, yeah. As of today, and since we were talking about assessing intelligence, what kind of digitalization should we aim for in order to preserve the validity of pen and paper test while having the advantages of digitalized assessment?
I didn't get the point. I heard intelligence, but what is the question?
What is the ideal
measure? The ideal measure
while using a digital assessment?
Yeah, just construct your instrument in a digital way is my best advice. I talk about published instruments. For if you talk about intelligence, I know in Belgium there are 40 tests to measure intelligence, and they all have benefits and opposites, and so I cannot say test X, Y, or Z is the best. It's just to keep it simple, is use the same way of assessment when you norm a test as when you use it. That's my main advice, but not test this or that. Okay?
Thank you. There
Okay,
is
thanks.
Do you believe that ERT it's not enough. We work a lot with ERT and it's a real complex psychometric thing. I don't know whether Sabrina can elaborate what you mean by just demonstrating. Are you there?
Sabrina? You asked a question about item response theory. Can you complete it, please?
Maybe she's not hearing you.
Hi, I'm here. I'm asking about when we use it RT to understand more the mood, the people answered the questions, answered paper and pen tests, we can understand more than what the level of the construct, what the level of the data. But if this is similar in the digital test, it is enough to give validity to the test, digital test, or we need another kind of approach to believe that the digital test was assessment the same thing of the paper and pen test. This is my question.
Yeah, I think ERT is a very important tool, but it's not enough. You need to do other things to prove. Even the very simple one-to-one, not sometimes it's too much a group level. That's the main point about that. Okay, but I hope you can see my email and I can send you some things where ERT is an important piece, but it's not to prove that it's totally okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Also what
Subjective. Yeah. Subjective. That's a possibility, Dennis, yes. If you can read it, you can read it, yeah. No? Perhaps because personality testing is more subjective than abilities assessment. That's a little piece of personality issues is how you feel today may have a big influence of how you look at yourself. So that's part of the explanation. As of today, and since we're talking about assessing that in order to present that, while having the advantage of good question, but difficult to answer. What kind of digitalization should we aim to? It's too difficult to go into that now. There's so many variations. I cannot say form X is better than form I. Maybe just to that, yesterday I heard that please look at digital assessment as a supplement and never as a replacement. That's a very big thing. I'm happy, not negative. I'm happy with digital testing. It's something more. Some things can we do better with a screen. So it's a supplement, but in Belgium, I say sometimes to my students, I'm sorry, you still will have pain in your arm because of the heavy cases you have to wear. And that will still be in 30 years, I hope, that you're still having pain in your arm with going to test with the big risk things. But at the other side, you will have a device, a little device to measure other things, interesting things, good things. Okay, thank you.
Oh, we are welcoming Nigel Evans and John. No, sorry. John Mervyn Smith? Yes. Yes, can you put it? And they're talking about organometric rather than psychometric approach to organizational change.
Can you confirm if can you see it?
That one.
Which one is it?
Yeah, that one.
That one. Thank you.
Thank you.
Morning, everyone. I'm John Mervyn Smith, Chief Psychologist with the GC Index. Nigel, I'm driving.
You are.
Trust me to drive.
That, John.
Okay.
Yeah,
So in the time that we have with you, we want to describe the journey that we've had over the last decade with an instrument called the GC Index. It started life as an exploration, really, and then we were seeking to understand individual differences around energy for impact. And it's moved on over time with Nigel's support. I'm assuming most of you will know Nigel, but you'll do an intro shortly, won't you? It's moved on, and we're describing it now as an organometric, which looks at collective energy for impact and differences across groups when it comes to energy for impact. So that's our journey. I'm driving. What do I
hopefully you clicked on that. There we go.
Nigel, a bit of context from you.
Yeah, just a bit of context. So first of all, you might know me as Chair of Board of Assessment at EFPA, but that is not my main job. Over many years of training people in metrics, designing metrics, using metrics, be it at the individual executive assessment level to organizational development levels and change levels, to actually there supporting people who have got their own metrics in their organization. So I work with a number of people like that, and very pleased to be working with John and the GC Index on that. I always try to sort of put this thing into context very practically. I think you've got to say that this is work psychology. This is not just individual psychology. This is very much team and organizational centered, hence the organometric approach to the work, very applied approach. Okay, this is not from a university. It is actually from a external and commercial budget that has been given from clients. And I guess the one of the biggest things that perhaps if you were listening to our opening yesterday, that this is a tool probably not for psychologists. Yeah, that most people that are using this are in this, I guess, the business space, if you like, or the organizational space of being organizational development specialists, team facilitators, and comes with that, out of that, because you are looking at with individuals, there's some kind of element of coaching along that side as well. So I just want to keep that as a very specific clarity around what we're talking about. In that sense, people say sort of different things, and I sort of got this Forbes quote out here. Good executives never put off until tomorrow what they can get someone else to do today. And the key thing is, who's that someone else? Yeah, it needs to be someone who is going to make a difference. Yeah, and that's really the whole element of GC Index, the research detail around, like, can we find these people somewhere who are game changers? Yeah, if only I found somebody in my organization or could recruit somebody, and could I find them somewhere?
We'll get to that.
And so that's the element that's there, but also it's really the energy that they need. Yeah, with that. Yeah, that's what we come up with. It's not the particular profile, it's the energy that they have to deliver that impact.
We're not going to dwell on this slide, but it's just a nod to the past, really. The interest in energy in our world is not new. People have been interested in it and developed their thinking about energy for over many years, and we could get distracted by this sort of conversation, but we put ourselves into that context. We're interested in understanding energy, but specifically energy for impact. And that story will unfold. Just to give you a sense now so that you can hold it in your heads, because I'm assuming that most of you are very new to this. This is the model. So this is the end point of understanding individual differences around energy for impact that we can use for both individuals and teams. That's where we ended up. We'll give you just a little bit of history about how we got there in a moment. But sort of in the very early days, with this focus on individual differences around energy for impact, this was how organizations were using that data to inform decisions about people, whether it was selection, whether it was development, but seen as complementary to other sources of data that we would typically use in that setting. So that was very much the starting point. In terms of it developing into an organometric, Nigel?
Yeah, I mean, I think the sort of there's an English term, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, in the sense of, are people using this? How are they using it? Are they getting value out of it? Is there some difference there? And effectively, using it in very commercial organizations, as we sort of see here, sort of drug company, looking at in education. So clearly, though it was at work or originated in a workspace, it's gone into an education, so schools or organizations, universities or education establishment organizations. Interestingly, one for me, and perhaps Michaela, who was in sports coach, actually in sports organizations there as well. So be it rugby, be it football, be it netball, there's a number of sports organizations using the index as well.
And just to reinforce some of that, but it's not a test. It profiles, using this model, someone's energy for impact. It's something that we typically do with people, not to them. So it's a basis for having a conversation about someone's impact in a range of settings that you've just talked about, Nigel.
Oh, this is a useful one, just as a plug for the EFPA model, as it were. Is one of the pieces of work that I originally did with John, is actually to write the manual, if you like. We don't really call it a manual, but sort of rather test manual, but sort of as a tech spec, or as we sometimes call it, the matrix, understanding what's behind this, effectively it is written very clearly in the EFPA model structure. So that in there, if you want to look at reliability, and are the alphas above 0.7? Yes, they are. Look at validity. Are those things above 5.3 or something? They're in there. Yes. Are there differences between men and women? Are there differences between different cultures? Whatever, it's in there as well. So basically, that's there. And in a bid for open science, email John with the organisation, and they will send it to you. You would have a look at it.
Okay, so just to gallop very quickly through the history, because you'll get a sense of why we are where we are now, because you're keen to talk about the current moment in time. The journey started in 2013, and there was a question that came from a number of organisations channeled through search firms that I worked with. I, in times past, used to profile candidates, shortlisted candidates for jobs. The question was about understanding people who could drive transformational change. They'd already tagged these folk as game changers, so we were rather stuck with that as a label. Those queries, it was interesting that they were coming at that point in time. Don't particularly understand that. But it was an interest primarily from professional services and other organisations. Could we help them to understand these folk? Our request to them was that they obviously do the research, ask the question, do these folk exist? If they do they have differentiating characteristics? And it was pleasant that they funded the research to underpin that. We won't go into that here because that's written up in the tech spec, but it was just as well they did, because that lasted for 3 years, that just line of inquiry, gathering data around trying to understand these individuals. With the question, are they a distinct talent? That was the point. Through that line of inquiry, we came to a pivotal point where we felt that we weren't getting anything that was particularly exciting from our data. These bullet-pointed statements came from a series of repertory grid interviews that we conducted. But on reflection, we wondered whether our data broadly was giving us a view of people different relative to capacity for original thinking that we call imagination and an obsessive nature. And we thankfully had the funding to just pursue our inquiry about are these overarching constructs of interest, put together a questionnaire, 57 items, with the help of Adrian Furnham at UCL. And what you've got on this slide is simply one of a series of pilot studies we did, where we simply asked people to fill in that questionnaire, dots of people, obviously, and all we had in the early days was this view of game changers being different to these two constructs. As we gathered data, and through the encouragement of a number of organisations, talent specialists in organisations like Orange and BT, we had enough data to build an understanding of differences relative to these two constructs. And as we were doing this, again, with the help of people at UCL, the view was that we were tapping into individual differences around energy for impact. And the model sort of culminated with this view of people who sit relative to these two constructs almost in the crosshairs. So pilot studies followed, where we simply went out, asked people to complete the questionnaire, and tested our understanding, because these tags came from us and were our attempt at understanding how people sought to channel their energy. So pilot studies we used to test that understanding. Now, I'm not sure whether we got time to go into each of these differently, Nigel. Probably just a quick run through, otherwise you'll be in a bit of a vacuum here. So strategist energy we see as a reflection of a drive to make sense of events in their world, typically with a view to making predictions about the future, which is the contribution in a work setting. Game changer individuals is a drive for creative expression. Those people we were listening to early on who might be described as loose cannons or all sorts of other descriptors, but a drive for creative expression is typically manifest in organizations as the basis for transformational change. Implementer drive is about delivering tangible outcomes. Polisher drive is about delivering tangible outcomes, but with a degree of obsession about quality and standards. And a playmaker drive is typically manifest as building consensus and cohesion in groups that leads to collaborative behavior. That's the model. Those are a quick journey through the underlying drives. When we think about the organometric bit, you're going to talk a bit more about this, we have a way then of using this data as an aggregate. Historically, I've used personality data as an aggregate. It's a bit cumbersome, clumsy. This is more accessible to people when you present it to teams. So what you've got on this slide are 4 professional services, Deloitte, Bearing Point, and Boston Consulting, those sorts of organizations with samples of individuals, and what you've got here is an aggregate of highest scores. You can begin to see that there are differences, collective differences, and it's those differences in collective energy that starts or underpins a conversation for those groups about their world of work. Nigel, did you want to pick this up?
Ian, I've said a 3-minute warning on this, so just to sort of go into it. I mean, it's the big picture stuff. Yeah, it's what OD consultants really like and what their clients really like. It's the idea of what have we got here? What's the organization? What's it looking like? And with various different cuts, aggregates, and etc., you can slice the data in different ways, different departments, different countries, different functions, whatever it might be, and have the, as we said perhaps in the previous session, somebody who knows what they're doing in terms of organizational consulting facilitation to ask proper questions, to really dig down in this area. So similarly, it is, it's not just here's the data, go away. It's actually saying what is it about it and pulling that information out. Very interesting is latest sort of work as well is that you do have to have people know what they're doing. We've helped along the line with some augmented AI tool technology. Basically here it's saying you can take any different document and then profile it in terms of the GC index proclivities that have the energies for impact there. So effectively here, if you have like a bit of job description or person specification, but we're actually at organizational level. So let's have a look at a team. So this is what the team needs to do: team purpose, team vision. What do they need to do? And effectively, what the tool does, we call it a GC translate, is look at this and then encode the different behaviors in there and the different outcomes that have. With that, you get a coding. And you say, well, hold on a minute. You said that you want this as your team, the organization. If you help do all these things, this is what's going to make success in the team. So everybody signs up to that code, right? So that's the profile you're looking for just from the. So we actually profile against the actual profile of the team themselves, and you see, and they see very, very different styles. Yeah, very, very different aspects of energy for impact. Just to pull one back on, just to see. Don't forget. Oh, hang on. I did this yesterday. Hang on. There we go. So that what we had, yeah. And so this is what we've got, yeah. So effectively, there's very little in their structure, very little about any people in have any energy for strategy and playmaking in that. So trying to look at the difference and make that sort of as apparent as possible for them. So with that in there, we just wanted to finish off with where we come from. Yeah.
Thank you. So perhaps one question or comment? Yes, shout online or in the room.
I can check if there are online questions.
Yeah, if you like them.
There is no question, no problem.
One question, right? With this
not to be underpinned by kind of openness to experience, but it has more sharp kind of way and motivation for achievement. If you got any big five of what data that relates these constructs to the role big five?
What we have at the minute, and if you're interested in pursuing that, please have a conversation with us. We looked at relationship with StrengthsFinder and couldn't find one. And we looked at relationship with Belbin data, and that was interesting in terms of the correlation between plant resource investigator and game changer, which suggested that plant isn't quite a sort of one-dimensional construct, but it was an interesting exploration. But as you might imagine, we don't have too much time for those sorts of studies. If you want to, then talk to us about that.
Thank you very much. Now we are welcoming Ana Hernández from Spain, and she's talking about evaluating non-commercial tests for systematic reviews and meta-analysis, improving test review models and the reviewing process. Okay. Yes. Thank you.
I think he was on the one. I don't know. I think he did. No. Okay. Well, hello, everybody. I'm going to talk about the assessment of non-commercial tests to analyze the quality of these tests by means of the test review models that are out there. I'm going to do this presentation together with Francisco Abad and Paula Elosua, who is the first author here. Both are members of the Spanish Test Commission, and we were talking about it yesterday, and so you know probably that the Spanish Test Commission is aligned with the EFPA objectives of improving tests and testing practices. And within the different actions we take to improve tests and testing practices, one key action is the test review models, proposing test review models, and applying those models to disseminate the results about test quality. This way, we think we are contributing to improving test quality and also the manuals that come with the tests, and also improving test use, because practitioners are more aware of what are the characteristics, the benefits, the problems of the tests which reports are published, so they can make more informed decisions. Internationally, there are different models, but one important one is the one that was proposed by the EFPA, and an adaptation of this model. The Spanish one is the one we are going to be used here. The model was proposed in 2000 and was reviewed in 2016. And so this is the questionnaire for test evaluation. We call it in Spanish, the CET-R, because it's the revised version, 2016 version. We started, even if the model was proposed in 2000, we started administering or applying the model in 2011. The first results were published in 2012. And since then, every year we try to publish a new edition of these test revisions or test evaluations. So we have more than 100 tests reviewed so far, and the results are all openly available in the Spanish Test Commission website. However, normally when we apply this type of models, we are thinking of commercial tests that always come with a manual. And there are cases in which we may be interested in reviewing tests that are not commercial, that are published in different journals, have been adapted to different contexts, and so the information to assess the quality of that test is disseminated in many different publications and different sources. So in Spain, we started analyzing some of these tests, and normally it's because of the importance of the decisions that are made with those tests. For example, the scale for predicting risk of serious partner violence, this test was used in the administration, in public administration services by police, etc. And we got the request of analyzing the test to see whether it would be good to use it or not. And in some other cases, like for example, this is the geriatric depression scale by Jessevach, and I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it well in French, but anyway, that is one of the tests most often used according to the opinion survey we ran. We asked about the opinion test, but also we asked which are the tests practitioners normally use in their day-to-day practice. And this one was of the 25 most used tests in the last survey. So we thought it would be good to include it in our round of revisions. So, of course, checking for the quality or applying the test review model to this non-commercial test is more difficult because the coordinator has to choose what particular paper should be reviewed, because of course the reviewers, you cannot tell them, okay, look for the information you want and assess whatever you want. They need to be somehow helped with the materials that they need to analyze, because I mean, it's a lot of work and the compensation is not so huge. So in this talk, what we wanted to show is the usefulness of systematic reviews and meta-analysis when we need to analyze this type of tests in order to apply the test review model. We focus on the generalized problematic internet use scale. We chose this scale because, I mean, you know that, well, especially in adolescence, and we had some sessions related to that, internet and social media and social networks can become a problem because there is some kind of addiction. So we thought it was relevant to assess in this questionnaire. So even if the global or main objective is to illustrate how this statistical technique, meta-analysis, and also systematic test review can help us in the process of reviewing tests according to the test review model, we had a secondary objective, which is assess the quality of the GPUs in their review version, in the revised version. So what information does the Spanish test review model include? We have like 3 main sections, like in the EFPA model. One that is more a description of the characteristics of the tests, the number of items, the response scales, things like this. Then the quality of the materials, and especially the psychometric quality. And we have like 3 main areas. Apart from item analysis, it will be reliability, validity, and norms. And then in the end, the last section has a quantitative and qualitative summary of all the evaluations. What does these GPUs measure? Well, it measures 5 dimensions that are captured or that are based in the cognitive behavioral theory of problematic internet use. So the first dimension is the preference for online social interactions. Then we have mood regulation, negative outcomes, cognitive preoccupations, which refers to you are thinking, you are obsessed with going online, and if you cannot do it, then you become preoccupied. And also the compulsive internet use. And in the original proposal, which is the, I don't know if you can see it here, yeah, the model on the right is the original one, where compulsive use and cognitive preoccupation are first order factors of this deficient self-regulation factor. Okay, so this is the model that was originally proposed by Kaplan. It has 15 items, as you can see, 3 per factor, and the response scale was from 1 to 8. Okay, but in the studies we reviewed, we saw that in many cases they were comparing this factor model with more parsimonious models, such as the unidimensional model, or, for example, one where the items of compulsive use and cognitive preoccupation were considered all indicators of a first-order deficient self-regulation. So in our review, we are going to be also comparing these models. The method we followed, well, apart from, we searched for many different databases, and we were looking for papers referred to either the abbreviation of the GPUs or the full name in the title of the paper, or also in the abstract, and then they needed to mention some psychometric properties like reliability or internal structure or psychometric properties in general. So we knew that they were going to provide some information on that also in the text, in the full text. So we found 201 papers because there were many databases. 138 were redundant, so that took us to 63 papers. But we chose those that were written either in English or Spanish. And also they needed to be empirical studies because some of them were just reviews of the problem of internet use. So this took us to 34 studies. And in the end, we analyzed 37 results or databases, we would say, because some studies provided more than one sample. So the 3 authors of this paper checked for all the information, coded the relevant information according to the criteria that is included in the test review model, and we ran, we executed the systematic review plus 2 meta-analyses because there was enough large number of studies for reliability and also for the relationship with other relevant variables. So for example, not for every single criteria, but for some of them, we included also the meta-analysis that was run using R and specifically the metaphor package. Well, when we moved to the results, we were considering any adaptation to any language. Okay, so we found that the test was translated and adapted to 9 languages. Most of them were using back translation processes, even if 2 of them did not provide information about how they did the process. The International Test Commission guidelines for test adaptation and translation was not mentioned in any of the studies, which is so surprising. And none of them tested for differences, differential item functioning between the 2 versions, the original one and the adapted one. Item analysis, not really the focus of the published papers, even if some of them, 6, provided information about means and also the correlation with the total scores. Correlations with other variables. The most important criterion was another scale, the internet addiction scale, which supposedly should be highly correlated with our main test, the GPUs. And as you can see, yes, I mean, there's a high average correlation. And it also correlated with relevant covariates such as depression, anxiety, and loneliness. The pattern was the expected one in terms of convergent and discriminant. The correlation with the internet addiction was higher than with the other variables. We also had 6 studies that use the time spent using internet as a more objective criterion variable, and we saw that the correlation was also high. I mean, depending on whether it was weekly time spent or daily time spent, we had some differences, but they are both positive as expected and moderate in size. The internal structure, there was a large variability in terms of the final structure that was defended in the paper. Some defended in the end 3 factors, some 7 factors with even a 3 higher order factor. But I mean, the winner among all these factors was the 4 first order factors, the model I showed you first on the left in the previous slide. That was only 4 first order factors instead of this second order factor. Diff studies, there are 3. 2 that consider gender, and another one that considers data collection, whether it was online or paper and pencil. And the results are relatively good in terms of full invariance or partial invariance. Reliability, alpha was really high, and this is the information that is most frequently reported across studies. And then test retest, only 1, but with a good value. Interpretation is where we didn't find anything in terms of norms or in terms of the cutoff points to conclude about whether there is a problem in internet use or not. Only 2, one was based on the normal distribution, but it's not really well funded, and the other one, the same, they were using ROC analysis, but we didn't have any external golden standard to define the cutoff point. When we did that, we were able to fill in every aspect of the test review model. Here we have the summary that is provided, so you can see that in general, the results are good, even if still some things to be improved. Things to consider when we are applying these systematic reviews and meta-analysis according to the test review models. Well, we need to take into account that here, for example, we were considering any language, English and Spanish, but in many different countries. And of course, we are interested in the use of this test in Spain, and there were only 4 studies for that. So I mean, we have a problem because we don't have enough studies to make a sound conclusion. The samples that are used in the studies are Western educated, industrialized, and rich and democratic societies. So we need also to collect data in other type of countries. Cross-cultural issues may rise here because, I mean, again, none of them are comparing the potential differences. Also, one thing we need to work on if we want to introduce this strategy when applying test review models is quality control, because not all the papers had the same quality. There were some that were really good and some that were not so good. And even if this looks like a good strategy, there are some adaptations that are required because some of the aspects are very difficult to judge, like the quality of the materials. So, I mean, and the final point, and to conclude, because we are late, is the financial and time costs. I mean, we pay €50 to each reviewer to do this, and you can imagine that a systematic review of literature and meta-analysis, it's a lot of time and effort. So whether this can be really implemented, it would be a challenge. And this is it. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much for your presentation. It's very useful for practitioners. Any questions? Yes,
thank you for the presentation. Maybe you focus today on commercial tests.
Why?
Useful to evaluate the quality of.
Well, because they are used. I mean, if they are being used by practitioners, it's like, what is the purpose of reviewing commercial tests? That they are used by practitioners and their decisions can be important. So, same thing. I mean, even if they are not commercial, if people are using them to make decisions, I think it's worth it to, for example, it's like, I don't know, the APA psych test is kind of this type of repository that they are publishing or summarizing the quality or the main characteristics of tests. So it's the same thing, but trying to integrate it with these models that are very systematic, and we think that they are useful to judge
Sorry.
It's okay, we can, that doesn't answer your question. Thank you.
Sorry.
We can put it double speed and maybe we'll.
I have a question, please.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
How do you share with other people your results?
The papers that we were, in this case, with the systematic review, I mean, which search for all the data, in the databases.
Your results. How you share? How do you share with?
The results.
Conclusion.
The results we are going to publish. The report with all the reports of commercial tests. You know, every year we make this public in the website. So this one is going to be included in the website. And for example, the geriatric depression scale also is also there, or so they are published like any commercial test.
Thank you. So
I cannot stop Cato Brunner.
Okay,
I thought there is no.
sorry, it's the last presentation. Yes. So it's the last presentation from Cato Road. I don't know if it's okay. So it's a video.
Yes.
Hi everyone, my name is Cato Grønnerød. I'm an associate professor at the University of Oslo. Thank you for the opportunity to present the NOPSIM project to you today. I work at the Department of Psychology, where I do research on personality and psychological assessment. I'm a clinical specialist, forensic psychiatric expert, and I'm also a member of the Board of Test Policies in the Norwegian Psychologist Association. The NOPSIM stands for Normative and Experimental Data for Psychological Assessment Methods. I will not present any data today, but rather the project itself, which is about establishing infrastructure needed in this kind of research. So, the NOPSIM is a network that aims to coordinate and develop research on psychological assessment methods in Norway. Now, psychological assessment methods in this context are tools used to assess psychological constructs such as personality and psychopathology. And this network will be utilized in two areas. One is to provide a network of researchers and institutions, national and beyond perhaps. The other is to support and develop technical and logical infrastructure tailored towards data gathering in normative and experimental or exploratory studies. And I will get to some of the details of that. So, the background for this project, there are a few points that I would like to mention. The first is that we know that local norms are essential to establish test quality. This is specified in the ITC guidelines, the International Test Commission. And we've also had a national debate on this topic in Norway in the recent couple of years. On a larger scale, Mayura and colleagues have pointed to the need for test validity review systems. How can we, as professionals, make sure that we use high quality methods in the right manner? To be able to do that assessment, we also need some kind of review system, and then putting this infrastructure in place might be helpful for that. Then there's also a need for new methods. Diagnostic systems are moving towards dimensional assessment of mental disorders, as we can see in the DSM-5, the AMPD, in the upcoming ICD-11, and empirical models like the HiTOP. Furthermore, research efforts often seem to be scattered. This is at least my experience from Norway, and there is a need for more coordination on the national level so that we as researchers are able to coordinate and cooperate to utilize limited resources. And then finally, we are struggling with limited technical infrastructure. Regulatory requirements mean that we are not always able to choose the technically most appropriate systems. And at least in Norway, we are left with relatively bare-bones survey systems, and they are not very well tailored to our needs in our research. So the NOPSIM network will provide infrastructure on 3 levels. One is to organize researcher networks to enable coordination and cooperation. The second level is the technical and logistical infrastructure. And the first part of this is web-based tools that are adapted to specific needs that we have, such as respondent feedback in the form of like personality dimensional graphs and results, for example. It could be randomization, test order, item response time, adaptive testing, etc. The second part is to establish respondent databases that can be accessed in different studies over time, which is also compliant with GDPR and other regulatory requirements. And this is a challenge today on how to solve this on a very practical level. And then in the future, we might envision a third level, which is to offer psychological assessment methods in the public domain, publicly funded, to researchers to incorporate in their research projects. We also need to connect the NOPSIM effort to existing and planned infrastructure. In Norway, we have NettSkjema, which is a web-based survey tool operated by the University of Oslo, which is integrated with TSD, our secure solution for sensitive data storage. So this is one of the major platforms and tools that we are aiming to try to develop. We also have initiatives from projects like NORSMI, which is working on a mechanism and a procedure for general consent from patients. They are currently collecting blood samples to be used in future research, and our aim is to also include assessment methods in this type of consent. The University of Oslo also has a hub node application for social science research that are aligned with the NOPSIM project, but additional adaptations are needed in their technical specifications. And then finally, a national project aims to build a platform for health analytics, and the NOPSIM network should aim to integrate into this platform as well. The project, as of now, is currently being administered and run from the University of Oslo, but we also have partnerships with the Norwegian Psychologists Association and with the other universities in Norway that are educating clinical psychologists. We would also like to include hospitals as partner, and we are engaged in the process with Østfold Hospital Trust at the moment, where I have a small affiliation. The Norwegian Directors of Health should, in our view, be engaged, as they are the main regulatory body in this field. Also, the publishing companies in Norway, that will mean Hågrefe and Pearson Clinical. They have the largest tests on the market. And then there is European cooperation. I would like to see a discussion about whether the EFPA could be a partner in this project. And with time, we also may aim for an upgrade to an EAS-FRI framework in the future, the European infrastructure system. The timeline is as follows. We are now establishing the interim national working group for the project. We are preparing a pre-project application, and then we might aim for, during the next spring, to establish a European working group, perhaps, and then to submit a draft application next summer, which will then move into a pre-project application during the autumn in about 1 year's time. Then if the pre-project funding is successful, then we will have that pre-project during 25 and into 26. And the aim of the pre-project will be to prepare the full application, which will then run from 2027. So, a
Results
short
from this survey
summary.
demonstrate that test use
The
continues
NOPSIM
to
is
be
a
an
national
integral part of
coordination
psychologists' work
of
methods.
research
Relatively
efforts,
less
meaning
concern
that
with
we need to
copyright law than
coordinate
psychometrics
researchers, but we
demonstrates
also
a lack
need
of
to have a
understanding of how
technical
informal channels
infrastructure
of
in
access to
place,
tests affect quality
consisting
in
of
terms of
web
inadequate
survey system
translation
and
methods and lack of
respondent
psychometric test
databases. And
data,
I
for
would like to
example, in technical
discuss the
manuals on
prospects
which
of
judgments of
European
test quality may be
coordination.
based.
So, thank you so much for your attention. Please feel free to contact me if you have any comments, questions, or even suggestions for cooperation. So, thank you very much.